Now, two of the more popular Snoke theories out there are that he's either Darth Plagueis the Wise, or that he's actually somehow Palpatine come back from the dead. And even though both of these theories have been pretty much shot down by Lucasfilm, who have said that there are no Sith in The Force Awakens, and that Snoke is a brand new character, these theories still persist and have people hoping they turn out to be right somehow, despite what has been said. And I think the main reason behind this hope is that people want Palpatine to still be the overarching villain of the whole saga, which, as a huge fan of the character, is something I can certainly understand. And if not him, then his master, who was of course Plagueis, would work because the only thing that might be even better than Palpatine, and more fitting, would be if the guy who taught him everything he knows didn't really die, but has been waiting in the shadows the whole time. However, in my opinion at least, the biggest problem with Snoke being Palpatine is it diminishes the end of Return of the Jedi when Vader turned on and killed Palpatine to save his son, because he wouldn't have really killed him anymore, and his sacrifice would, in a sense, feel somewhat in vain. And sure, you could argue it was the decision that was the most important part, that he chose his son over his master, but it somehow feels off to me if now Palpatine is back and needs to be stopped again. And that Luke is really the one who has to finish what Vader started by finishing off Palpatine once and for all. So is there another way to make Snoke feel like he's been a part of this story all along, that he has real history or attachment to Palpatine, our main villain of the first 6 movies? Because even though the saga movies are clearly meant to be the story of the Skywalkers, they are also in a way the story of Palpatine. And yes, some have suggested that Rey could be a creation or child of his somehow, which is a cool idea and one I could easily get on board with, but not one I'm sure they'll go with. And besides, that doesn't make Snoke a part of the bigger picture. So just what can make him feel like a part of the grand story and not something or someone that has just come out of nowhere? Well, perhaps Snoke was the original apprentice of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and one defeated by Palpatine who took that position from him. And I know that goes against a lot of what we learned about in the novel Darth Plagueis, which was a fantastic book, probably my favorite of the old EU, but of course, the old EU is no longer canon, and anything and everything in that book could be changed or modified at the very least. And there are actually a couple reasons why I think Snoke could be the original apprentice of Plagueis. And going along with modifying that novel, we know one reason Plagueis had interest in Palpatine was because he was a very charismatic political figure, and one Plagueis could use to take over the Republic from within. And though we don't know much about Snoke, he seems to have a lot of similarities to Palpatine, and may have originally been the one Plagueis saw rising to power within the Republic. Because by now I think most of us have seen the leaked image of Snoke where he is wearing a gold robe, which maybe I'm crazy, but to me implies he is and always has been a man of wealth, prestige, and obvious power. We've also been told that Snoke was once very handsome, which, yeah, sure, I guess I could see once upon a time. And of course, being handsome wouldn't have hurt him in his political rise. And by the fact that he has somehow become the supreme leader of the First Order, we can also assume he is charismatic and has leadership qualities, which again could imply he was once a politician and one under the tutelage of Darth Plagueis, who wanted him to ascend to the top of the Republic. Again, until Palpatine came along. It might even be interesting, though likely not touched upon in the movie, but maybe a book someday, if Snoke and Palpatine were longtime political rivals. And, in true Sith fashion, Plagueis cleverly arranged for a duel between his current apprentice, Snoke, and a possible replacement that he may have been mentoring in both dark side arts and politics on the side, that of course being Palpatine, and it was a duel that Palpatine clearly won, and could explain the scar across the top of Snoke's head. But if this is the case, how did Snoke survive, and how is he alive all these years later? Well, maybe he was a better apprentice than Plagueis realized, and he knew how to save himself from death, which even Plagueis had not yet mastered. It would also explain why he looks so old, and how he has kept himself alive all these years. And perhaps the reason he's been hiding in the shadows so long, during the entire reign of Palpatine as Emperor, is because he was continuing Plagueis' work and looking for a way to create life, and maybe even a new body for himself. Hell, he could have even accidentally or intentionally created Rey at some point, thus answering the question of who is Rey's father. It would also explain why he seemed so quickly to take a keen interest in her at the end of The Force Awakens. Another thing it would explain is why the First Order is so similar in structure and appearance to the Empire, other than the fact that it is just created from the remnants of the Empire, and that is because it was originally the idea of Plagueis, who taught the way it should be constructed, managed, and appear to Snoke first and then Palpatine, and now Snoke, who obviously still has a bit of a grudge against Palpatine, is building the Empire as Palpatine did, only better. And as for what has been said about there being no Sith in The Force Awakens, well, it's likely that Snoke stopped thinking of himself as a Sith after his defeat at the hands of Palpatine and has decided to create a new type of dark side hierarchy. Then, of course, there is the dark side power that Palpatine felt out in the unknown regions, which we learn about in Aftermath. And I'll admit, I've been on board with the idea for a while that Snoke is somehow connected to it, but as many have pointed out, it could be the proverbial red herring, or be something else entirely that may or may not even factor into this trilogy. For all we know, what it is will start to set up something bigger down the road. And now is the part of the video where I'll poke a few holes in my theory, and for me, the biggest one would be, it doesn't really bring anything new or different into the picture in terms of what our main villain wants. In other words, he's just trying to rule the galaxy via an empire, and we've certainly been there and done that. Of course, this feels like a bit of a problem no matter who Snoke is. Then again, and I hope, we're going to learn that Snoke has bigger plans still, even though we've been told we don't learn much about him in this next movie. It could also be that, no matter who Snoke is, he's not as important to the story as we all assume he will be, and that Kylo Ren will become the true threat, not that he's not one already, but perhaps Snoke is not that powerful, and Kylo either knows this, or will learn it and do away with him, and then begin his own agenda, that being to finish whatever Vader started, which could really be something we don't know about yet, and be something totally different from just trying to rule the galaxy. Kylo may even be so interested in getting Snoke's guidance and having his training completed because he knows he can and wants to destroy Snoke. Either way, I do understand those who want Snoke to be Plagueis or even Palpatine come back from the dead, and that he'll somehow be attached to the overall story and not just thrown in there as some new big bad villain. And I think being an old rival of Palpatine's and an apprentice of Plagueis once upon a time, and maybe one who excelled during his time in hiding and became as powerful or even more powerful than they were, is one way to do that. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Could Snoke and Palpatine be old rivals? Let me know in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.